The coolest of cats is American correspondent Garland Nixon. Boy, have I got things to talk to him about. Garland, it's so wonderful to have you back on the show. You're looking magnificent as always. Let's start with the AUKUS. It's caused such a ruckus. Do the American people even know that they have mortally offended France, and they've now got here today, gone tomorrow, Australian Prime Minister whose name the United States President can't remember and who may be out of office next year? Do they know or care?
I would argue the answer would be no to both questions. You know, having traveled around the world a bit, I see that the American people, particularly the current crop of Americans that we have, the current electorate that we have, is concerned with the problems that they have here and are less than knowledgeable about international affairs, particularly when our media does everything they can to mislead them. So I would argue that most Americans are, you know, they're caught up in chasing some kind of carrot that they'll never get, and which at this time in America, the argument that the Democrats are actually going to reduce taxes on the rich is out there for people to chase for a while until it fades, as it generally does. So Americans really don't know much about that, and it's not a huge, believe it or not, it's not a big story in the mainstream media as it should be.
Well, CNN, which used to pride itself on being the breaking news story, did not report for 3 whole hours that France had withdrawn its ambassador to the United States, something that I think has never happened before, and something that might have been thought newsworthy. They did, after all, send you the Statue de Liberté.
Well, the thing I think this is a valuable lesson for France. What France is learning now, they should have long known, and that is that the United States empire is stringently hierarchical, both inside and outside of the empire. So the empire's alliances, and I use that word guardedly, alliances of vassal states and hangers-on, also have a very hierarchical nature. And the countries that are English-speaking go to the front of the line. And France doesn't speak English. They are not at the front of the line. I also suspect, believe it or not, I suspect that Australia may have been looking at their financial balance sheets and might have been looking for a way out of that very expensive a deal that they have with France over submarines over the long term, and realized that, I mean, the deal with the U.S. is utopian. I don't see how a country of 25 million can have the resources necessary to purchase and maintain a fleet of 8 nuclear submarines. So in the long run, 5 or 6 years, I think this thing fades into history anyway, and it never comes to fruition.
I have a feeling that's how the Chinese look at it, too. I'm much more exercised by it than it seems China is. But if it were to happen, it has potentially life extinction as its end course. Why is Biden so maniacal about China? I thought Donald Trump could not be outdone in his anti-China madness. But I think Biden is toe-to-toe with Trump in this madness.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I've even seen Biden, to some extent, I would argue, kind of take it to a higher level. And I think it's because Biden really represents the empire, and the empire wants to be hegemonic. They want to run the world. And doggone if those Chinese aren't taking the position that they have a right to bring their people out of poverty and to advance their economic interest around the world, thereby giving some of the developing countries an option other than the United States for economic improvement. And I think there's basically what you're looking at is a panicked empire who doesn't know how to deal with China. I mean, and let me add this. If you think of it, even if they give the submarines to Australia, how does that change the balance of power? What does that really do? It puts some money in the pockets of some U.S. War profiteers in the unlikely event that it comes to fruition. So I think the U.S. foreign policy is kind of like a drowning man who's just reaching in every direction, trying to grab anything to hold on to pull himself up. And this is just another example of that.
Mind you, Some Democrats are going out on a limb. At the Met Gala, tickets $30,000. AOC, the great hope of liberals and progressives in America, struck a blow for class struggle by having the train of her dress carried in by a masked servant. She looked rather stunning in it, I must say. Even before I read the words on the dress in lipstick, tax the rich, did that send US capitalism scurrying for the bunker?
No, I suspect that they laughed and, sat back and had another drink and felt good about it. I mean, think about this. AOC comes into Congress and says, I'm going to fight the system. And then she basically acquiesces to everything that the hardcore capitalists and the neocons want. Now, take her career since she's gone into Congress, and then compare that to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard came in and basically stood up against the empire and said, we need to end the Cold War. We need to end these wars. We need to use the money for people. They ran her out of Congress. She's out now. So I would argue that if you come into Congress and you truly try to fight the system, another guy, Will Hurd, a Republican from Texas, he, really tried to fight the system. He's out the door. If AOC was truly trying to fight the system, they would have ran her out of office. Once you join the criminal enterprise that is the U.S. empire, once you join that criminal enterprise, there's only two options. You go along with their worldwide, move for hegemony, or you're going to be out the door. Tulsi Gabbard's out the door. AOC is still there, which means she supports the empire.
Well, it got tremendous publicity over here and on social media. How did it play in Peoria?
Well, basically, it is what AOC has become. And this is not to praise or to put down AOC. She has become a pop culture figure. So that the things that AOC does, the moves that she makes would be like, when we're looking at what the Kardashians did, when we're looking at, when Michael Jackson was alive, or Britney Spears, if she was out there doing something. It falls into that category. I don't think AOC's actions even fall into a political category anymore, because she's not taking on the powers that be politically. She's drifting along with that. And every now and then she'll do something cute and people will clap and say, wow, did you see that?
In California, the recall petition failed, comprehensively failed. Is that a big boost for centrist Democrats?
They will argue that it's a big boost, but I would argue, really? You won in California and you're arguing that gives you some kind of a mandate and for your policies? Now, had you lost or come close to losing in California, that would be a major political, that would be a political earthquake. But the fact that you won in California, I mean, it would be like the Republicans winning in Mississippi. That is, you are on your home end of the field. There's no way in the world that they shouldn't win in a blowout. So I would make the argument, certainly they're going to argue it's some kind of mandate. You won on your home field in a blowout. You should have won on your home field in a blowout. So politically, it really means nothing. And
Donald Trump, he seems definitely to be running to me. What's your take on that?
I think Donald Trump's running. It's interesting. I think that the Democratic Party is thinking very, very short term right now, whether it's with the vaccine mandates. They think that's going to help. But I would argue this. They're popular with some, but within a year, 1 to 2 years, when we get closer to the election, people are going to look at some of the more dramatic policy changes that have been made under the Biden administration and evaluate whether or not they have been successful. So I think there were some polls out recently that showed that Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden. We have a long time. Will it be Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Or will it be Donald Trump and Kamala Harris? In which instance, I think it's a cakewalk for Donald Trump if he faces off with Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I think the same. And it's inconceivable to me that Joe Biden will be on the ballot in 2024. I think all joking aside, the scene, the farce of the US president calling a landmark live news event and then forgetting the name of the sovereign prime minister on his right, calling him the fella down under, the idea that he's still going to be compos mentis in 2024 to be a remotely credible presidential candidate is fanciful to me. So I expect Kamala Harris to succeed him as president probably rather soon.
Yes, and I mean, going into 2024, if you look at what Donald Trump had to go against, and again, I'm not a Trump, I'm an independent, I'm not for either of them, but because of the pandemic, the Democrats were able to hide Joe Biden in a basement. They were able to cancel debates. They were able to hide him as much as possible because it was in the early stages of the pandemic. Going into 2020, that was in 2020. Going into 2024, they won't be able to hide him if he is in fact still the president. He'll have to be out there and go toe to toe with Donald Trump, and he will not fare well. And as for Kamala Harris, her political skills are very weak. I mean, just as a candidate for any office, we can see how poorly she did in the primary. So to put Kamala Harris out there, to me, they might as well look for give her a white flag. That should be, a bumper sticker with a white flag would be an appropriate thing for Kamala Harris to run with.
Garland Nixon, as always, totally fascinating, blistering. Thank you very much indeed.